I miss it so much.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Newark Museum of Art. I'm Amy Simon Hopwood, and we'll just give a minute or two before so that people can join us. But welcome for those of you who've been to the museum virtually, and to those of you who have not yet been here virtually, welcome. And I just wanted to let people know that we will have the program, and you can ask your questions throughout the program on the Zoom question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. If you are on Facebook Live, please put your questions in the comment fields and we will have time to answer some. We usually have so many wonderful questions, we're not able to answer them all, but welcome. And so I think we have quite a few people joining us, and it's wonderful to be able, even if we can't be in the museum in person, we can reach so many more people this way. So I think we'll just let one or two more people come in. So. Okay, well, I think we'll get going because we have a lot to say. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Newark Museum of Art. I'm Amy Simon Hopwood, Associate Curator of Decorative Arts, and I'm very honored to welcome you today. For those of you who just joined us, please enter your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and those of you on Facebook Live, please add them in the comment fields. And though I know that more people are joining us, we want to get moving. And so it's my great honor today to introduce you to Dr. Christian Greco, Director of the Museo Egizio in Turin, Italy. He's an Egyptologist and has worked with museums and has curated many exhibitions throughout the world, around the world, I should say. And since 2014, he has served as director of the Museo Egizio. And there he has created a dynamic museum, renovating both the building and the galleries, setting up international research and museum collaborations, and bringing the vast collections of ancient Egyptian artifacts to new local and international audiences through a variety of dynamic programs and exhibitions, blending art, science, and history. Again, all through the museum's wonderful and vast collections. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Greco, and I welcome you to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me to be here and to have the chance to present Museo Egizio to, even virtually, to those who are following us today. So if I could have my first slide, I would like to introduce you briefly on what the museum is. Here we go. Just a slide presenting numbers. Actually, the number I cared most about is the fact that we have 19 research projects, some of which are European research projects. We have 2 excavations in Egypt. We just started. I arrived in the museum in 2014, and in 2015 we started going back to the field and excavating. For a museum like ours, with the collection which was formed 200 years ago, is so important to go back to the field in order to be able to give an archaeological background to the objects. I would also like to stop 1 second on the number of visitors, about 900,000 visitors, which is of course pre-COVID. We have been badly hit, as everybody had, of course. We've been closed in lockdown for more than 3 months. Now we have been open since the 2nd of June, but the number of visitors has been going down considerably, which for us is a kind of challenge and worry that we have, since we are not a state museum, we are a private foundation. We do not get money from the state. We just survive with the generosity of our visitors who pay a ticket to come inside, and with our bookshop, with the events we organize, and with touring exhibitions. So it's a rather difficult time ahead of us. Please, next one. May I have next slide? Yes, thank you. This is only to show you we had actually research project and exchange of objects and exhibition more or less with with all the continents, excluding Australia from the time being. We of course have our excavation in Egypt, and at this moment we have a Turin exhibition which is at the Nelson Atkins Museum. It's been closed because of the lockdown, but it's going to the Kimball Museum at the beginning of November. And we also have another Turin exhibition in Brazil, closed at the moment, of course, in Sao Paulo. In the meantime, we will open on 15th of October a new exhibition in Helsinki and Tallinn. Next one, please. That's why in the past few years, we had guides and books published in many different languages. We had a very important Turin exhibition in China with more than 4 million visitors. Next one, please. And this is some dates that show, first of all, the buildings where we're in is a beautiful Baroque building, which has been renovated. As Amy said, we just reopened on the 1st of April 2015. And here you see some of the dates which have been very important. Very important, and the dates I will talk about today is 1824 is the date of the foundation of the museum, and 1894, the moment when this museum was transformed into an archaeological museum where Ernesto Scaparelli became director of the museum. Next one, please. Yes, it's just a short video that shows you some images of the major renovation we went through. Our museum just doubled the capacity. We went from a surface of 5,000 square meters to more than 12,000 square meters. It's been a very difficult and challenging time because we have decided not to close the museum. And while in some part of the museum people were working, we were moving the collections from one gallery to the other. And in the meantime, we also little by little opened galleries so that visitors could come all the time anyway and see our collection. You see here some images of the so-called tomb of Carn. Is the most precious assemble of great goods that we have in our museum. Is the only complete tomb of the New Kingdom which is housed outside of Egypt. I will show you in a minute when it was found. And this is the very moment when we had to take down the Book of the Dead papyrus of Carn. Is a Book of the Dead papyrus of 40 meter 50. We couldn't possibly move it through the building, so we had it to roll up in this kind of giant wheel at the presence of more than 25 conservators. And the museum at that time was quite gorgeous because it was transformed into a huge lab. We had 200 conservators working on our collection, rehydrating fibers, cleaning pottery, working on the materials so that the museum could open. It was also the very moment where a huge research program started. You see the moment when we started doing the CT scan to all our mummies. And this was also not the beginning, not only the beginning of moving the collection, but also the beginning of our new strategy of research and publications. The next, please. So, next one. Can I have next the next slide, please? No, just go back. Yes, I just want to say a few words concerning how the collection was formed. So in the previous slide, you saw a wonderful bronze table, which is known as the Mensa Isiaca. Is one of the most important objects that we have. It was found in Rome in 1527. It was saved by from the ransack of the Germans, and is one of the only piece that we have on metallurgy from ancient Rome. Is from the 1st century AD. You see the representation of the goddess Isis in the center with other gods around it, and it came to Turin in 1626, and when he arrived, it was the basis to form a myth, namely that Turin was founded by Egyptians. The name Turin, in the name you have the Latin words Taurus, and it was thought that this tower was, of course, the bull, the Apis bull of Egyptian origin. Nearby the museum, there was a small temple of Isis, which was found because, as you probably know, starting from the 1st century AD, the cult of Isis spread all around the empire. That's why, next one, please. If the Mensa Isiac arrived in 1626, in 1759, the king sent a royal botanist of the Royal University of Turin to Egypt to find objects that could explain the Mensa Isiac. And he came back, for instance, with this beautiful statue of Isis and two other monumental Egyptian statues. Next one, please. And this statue of Isis welcomes the visitors when you come to the museum. Next one. But the most important date for the formation of our collection is 1824. And here you see all the people involved. There is this person on the left with the moustache. His name is Bernardino Drovetti. He was Consul General of France in Egypt. And he collected a collection of 5,000 objects, and he managed to sell it to the two guys that you see below the screen, Victor Emmanuel I and Carlo Felice. They were brothers, and they successfully became kings of the Kingdom of Sardinia, where Turin was the capital. And well, they decided to buy this collection. You have to realize that in order to buy the collection, they paid 60 million euros, which is an enormous amount of money, but it was even 3/4 of the budget of the Kingdom of Sardinia. They decided to invest in this huge collection, realizing that buying this is what is still nowadays the second most important collection outside of Egypt, would make this city the center of Egyptology forever. Actually, this could happen also thanks to that guy on the right. His name is Carlo Vidua, who wrote a letter in 1819 when he went to Egypt and he saw the Drovetti collection. He wrote a letter to the king and he said, "Only if Turin will buy this collection, Italy will be a great country," which as an Italian really strikes me all the time, because Italy was not unified yet. Italy was unified in 1861. But he said it will be a great country because we will have the first and most important Egyptian collection in Turin, the most important art historical collection in Florence, and the most important antiquities collection in Rome. Well, it's also a fact that these three cities that I mentioned, they all became capitals of the country. And well, we must be very thankful to the king who decided to buy this collection and to make Turin the center of Egyptology. Next one, please. This is how the museum looked like in the 19th century. It was a center of study where people would come. So the museum was not really meant for the large public, but for people who would come in the museum, study the collection and see the object. Next one, please.
There is an echo problem that people are complaining about, so I'm going to stop sharing and restart. There is a setting that I can improve. I'm sorry for this, but I just want to try something because the people are complaining of echo. Let's try again.
Yes. Is it better?
If people can write in the Q&A if they're still hearing an echo or not. Thank you, and sorry for the interruption.
No, thank you for your help. So, well, here we are in this gallery where you see at the center what is called the so-called Turin papyrus. Is one of the most important objects documented was preserved from ancient Egypt. It's a list of kings in chronological order that allowed us to make a chronology of ancient Egypt. It's so important. It's only one of the 3 documents that have been preserved from ancient Egypt, allowing us to build up a chronology. Next one, please. And this is how the museum looked like at that time. When the museum was like this, Jean-François Champollion arrived and saw these statues and wrote, well, history of art of ancient Egypt can be written then. Why did he say so? Well, remember, we are in 1824. Only 2 years before that date, in 1822, the hieroglyphs were deciphered. And people were not really used to see Egyptian antiquities, and they thought that Winkelmann, in his History of Art of Antiquities, wrote that the only art that could be defined as such was Greek art, and Egyptian art was very primitive. And in this very room, the founder of our discipline, Jean-François Champollion, wrote how beautiful Egyptian art was. Next one, please. And here is Jean-François Champollion, who managed, studying our collection, making the first catalog, to prove also whether his theory about the reading and the decipherment of the hieroglyphs was valid or not. Next one, please. But 70 years later, Ernesto Scaparelli arrived and completely transformed the museum. He realized that in order to let Turin gain or remain at the top of the most important Egyptian museums, he needed to go to the field, to go to Egypt and start excavations. Next one, please. We can go to the next one. Yes, if you can start. So we are on the 15th of February, 1906. Scaparelli, his Workmen Find opening. This opening turns out to be an opening of a shaft. They go down, the shaft is 8.50 meters. They found this first staircase and then blocked off, and then a second gallery blocked off. And when they took out all the stones, they found themselves in front of that door that, as you see, was still sealed. Arthur Weigel, inspector of antiquity in Luxor, was with him, wrote, "The moment of resurrection had come." And in putting together the photographs that he took in 1906, we can go inside the burial chamber and see all the objects of Cha and Merit. We still see the coffins covered by linen. We still the residues of bread, fruit, and meat. In the jars, there is oil, beer, wine, all what Cha and his wife Merit needed in the hereafter. 467 objects were found inside, and the burial chamber was found intact. They entered, as I said, on the 15th of February 1906, and Cha and Merit were buried there in 1350 BC. Here you see the workmen coming out with all the objects that now you can admire in the museum. It was amazing because Egyptian authorities allowed all the objects to come to Italy with the idea that a unified contest, archaeological contest, could not be divided. Next one, please. Next one. We can go to the next video, please. Yes, this one. I just want to show you briefly the fact that Scaparelli found in the tomb, of course, 467 objects, but he found also the mummy of Cha and Merit. He did not open the mummies because he realized that he would damage the mummies themselves. So he decided to leave them untouched. He wrote in a letter something that always strikes me, and for me, Scaparelli is well, a great teacher from whom I have to learn every day, because he wrote down that it was important not to unwrap the mummies, because it would come a time when we would be able to look inside without damaging the mummies. Well, we've been sitting scanning all the mummies, and now for the first time on your very eyes, you can see Cha in front of you. Let me introduce you briefly to this person. He was Imi Erkaut Nezut, responsible of the works of the pharaoh. It is a very high-ranking position. As you see, his mummy, his body is not really well preserved. It has a skeleton. Only on the back there is some skin preserved. But what is amazing, and in the 2 minutes left, I would like to explain it to you, is to see the jewels that he has. Look around his neck. He's got the so-called gold of honor. It's called the collar of the Shebiu. It's something that a king would give to his most important official to compensate them for their duties towards the king and the royal house. We do not have any archaeological attestation. This is the only one we have. And well, don't be worried, I will never unwrap the mummy to take it out. So actually, thanks to the digital revolution and to new technologies, we are able to look inside and to see it right now in front of our eyes. We see that he has also very heavy earrings. We see that he has a beautiful heart scarab on his chest, where there is probably the Book of the Dead chapter 30 of 30b, where the deceased would pray to his heart and asking his heart to be faithful and to give the right answer to the king Osiris. What is also amazing in the mummy, we still have the brains, the lungs, and the other organs are still inside. Has not been eviscerated, has not been his brain has not been taken out. Which is rather important because Herodotus, the Greek historian who talks to us about the wave of mummification, always says that there are different levels of mummification depending on the money that one had. And why Carn was not excerebrated? Well, we don't know that. When we published the results, there were literally all universities from around the world, from Sydney to Los Angeles, medical schools that asked me whether we could extract some DNA from the brains. And of course I said no, because my duty is to preserve the mummies. I had to learn from Scaparelli. He didn't unwrap them, and he said one day we might be able to look inside. He couldn't think 110 years ago that we would be able to look inside. And now I say, maybe not our generation, but the generations to come will be able to do endoscopic analysis without damaging the mummy. I see that I spent my 20 minutes, so hereby I leave. Thank you.
Well, I just have word, Dr. Greco, that everyone is so interested. So we would be happy for you to speak about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So much wonderful information. We may have fewer question time, but your information is fascinating.
Hello, let me go, if you please. I would go to the last video I have. So if we go a little bit faster and we just jump to the last video. Here we do, you see, by the way, the 3D printing that we did of the jewels, but let's go further because I want to show you what we're doing on coffins. So now next one, please, go. Just go further. And it should be this one. Let me see. Yes, I want to show you something that we are discovering in our museum. We are working together with Professor Karakuni of University College of Los Angeles, and with an international team where there is the Vatican, the Louvre, British Museum, Rijksmuseum van Oudheden in Leiden. We have been doing research, me personally, in the last 10 years, and when I came to the Museo Egizio, we decided to join this international research group, where we are talking about the reuse of coffins. And what I'm going to show you is spectacular. What you see in front of us is a so-called yellow coffins. This typology of coffins is those coffins which were developed at the beginning of the first millennium BC. It belongs to Bute Hamun. Bute Hamun was a royal scribe and the royal scribe of the necropolis of the Valley of the Kings. We did a 3D scanning of the coffin and then CT scans, and we realized that this coffin is made up of 30 different pieces of other coffins. Please remember that because it's rather peculiar. When we look at the coffin and we look at the difference in opacity, we see also that there is not only wood, but there is other material in the coffin to keep all these different pieces together. Then we looked into details and we saw that there was a hole underneath his chin, which has been covered up, and so a beard which was taken out. But then we look at hands and we see that he had outstretched hand which has been cut off, and now he has two fists, which means a different in gender. Two fists are typical of a man, and two stretch out hands are typical of a woman. And when you look at details in the coffin, you see spots where you see this black bitumen. And this is also quite interesting because it's a feature of coffins of the beginning of the 18th dynasty. We see it on the side, we see it on the back, and we see also there are pieces of wood put in order to keep it all together. And when we look at the base of the coffin, we see that it's way too small, and a frame had to put around it in order to keep it together. So let's go back and understand how the coffin was made. It is wood. On top of the wood, they put clay, then they put a textile to keep it together, and then hand-tight and calcite on top of it. Then the artist started doing the drawings in red, then he started coloring in ochre and black, then he put green and Egyptian blue, and that's last one, orpiment. This pigment made over arsenicum, which gave this golden-like image. And why did they do that? They were not able to use gold anymore. They were the economic situation of Egypt was quite poor at the beginning of the first millennium. It was the end of the new kingdom. Egyptians were not able to go to the Levant anymore to bring wood to build their coffins. So where did they find their wood? In coffins of previous generations. And here now for us is the question. I actually like it because you see how the digital revolution allows us to go inside in an object to study the biography, but now new questions comes out. And now we need historians, we need philologists, we need to go back to the sources and realize, how is it possible that the coffins were reused? And I didn't tell you, but Buta-Hamon had a very important task given to him by the high priest of Amon. And that his task was, said in Egyptian, Vehemkeres. He had to rebury the coffins who might be in danger by those who wanted to plunder the tombs. And while doing this, he would reuse part of the coffin himself to build his own coffin. And to show you how complicated it is, I want to read with you the following text, which is coming up, which really shows us how the situation is complicated. Actually, Buta-Hamon that had the task to rebuild rebury the coffins, who used himself coffins previous generation, write this text to his wife. O noble coffin of the singer of harmonic tie, who rests inside you, listen to me so that you can convey my message. As you are near, tell her, how are you? How are things? I found it a beautiful love manifestation to his wife, who is already dead. And he doesn't write to his wife, but he writes to the coffin of his wife. So see how complicated it is. He has the duty to put coffins in safety. In the meantime, he reuses coffins of previous generations for his own coffin, but when he misses his wife, he writes to the coffin. Actually, this is part of an ostracon, which is in the Louvre, and the text goes further, and at a certain point, he's even angry to the coffin because he says, you can still hug her, which I can't anymore. That's why now some students are working on their PhD to understand how these new questions that the material culture gives to us.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for that, I know, very brief introduction to your work and to the collections of the Museo Egizio, Dr. Greco, but that's just so fascinating to hear how all of your technological research has allowed these bigger questions, and the thought that people are reusing coffins, that they weren't able to get their material, leads to so many new questions. Absolutely. And also has it in in your research so far, has this research that you've done through the technology and these new questions, have you been able to answer questions about other objects in your collection because of this new information?
Yes, actually, there are. Well, this thing of the reuse is becoming now a big issue in Egypt. I mean, in Egyptology, and actually it strikes me that we never thought it before. Because if you go to any Egyptian collection, normally you see a lot of coffins of the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and then you jump into the first millennium. And where are those of the New Kingdom? Well, they are here, only we don't see them. They are embedded in the very often in the 21st dynasty coffins. And first of all, the question of the reuse, we are going back to the text and we are trying to understand whether the coffin was defined per enjet, house of eternity. Whether though, in this period, they could consider the moment of the funeral and especially the moment of the ritual of the opening of the mouth, the very moment where the coffin was so useful because there was a transformation of the body, and after that it could be reused. Because we have one case when the coffin is reused within a family. We have a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter who reused the coffins. But now, when we started thinking about reuse, one of the first things we did was double check whether the name and information we have on the coffin match with the body with the mummy inside, and most of the time it doesn't. They belong to different sex, for instance. So we have a male mummy and a coffin inscribed and decorated for a woman. So, but you know, there is also a different layer of complication because we have to understand whether this happened in the antiquity market, where the collection was bought, or it happened in antiquity in Egypt. So, I mean, the more we look for, the more questions.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And I think that is the exciting part of research. And even if you can't use new technology, but that gives us so many more questions. But anytime you start to study something, you have so many more questions. And I personally have so many questions for you, but I want to honor some of our guests. And so speaking about that, one person would like to know, is there any evidence of that secondhand market for these coffin fragments? I guess they don't specify, but at the time, but also later.
So at the time, not really a market, but an extensive reuse. So we have to understand that they did not have the possibility to have wood anymore. There is also a very nice text, ancient Egyptian text, which is the story of Venamun, when Venamun tries to go to Palestine, and it's so difficult. He becomes a prisoner, is beaten up. So it shows that Egypt is not so powerful anymore in the Eastern Mediterranean. So they had to reuse the coffins, but somehow it was allowed. But what is really, we are studying now, how is it possible? Because texts still refer to the coffin as being the house of eternity, but still we know, though, that the tombs were plundered. There is the so-called robbery papyrus in the British Museum that explains also a lot of robberies going on. So we have a lot of evidence of reuse, so people would go there. There is a coffin in the British Museum with an inscription inside the lid where is written Vehem Keresu. It has been put again in another burial chamber. And to give you an example that probably all of you know that in 1881 and in 1892 in Egypt there were two major discoveries. One was the so-called first cachette of the Al-Bahri, and then the second cachette of the Al-Bahri. The first cachette was the one that found back the royal mummies. The royal mummies were in a hidden burial chamber taken out from the Valley of the Kings and put in a safe place in front of the temple of Hatshepsut in the Al-Bahri. And it happened in this very period. And the second one is the tomb of Bab al-Gazus, where the coffins of 156 priests of Amun were found in 1891. So we have a lot of evidence of reburials. And probably you followed in the news in January in Egypt, there was a cache of another 30 coffins, yellow coffins, which were found.
Wonderful. So many wonderful questions and opportunities for more research. And I have, on a different note, I have a message and a question here from the Carn Museum in Pennsylvania. which started in 1878 with the purchase of the personal Egyptian collection of Rodolfo Lanzone, who was then an Egyptologist at the Turin Museum.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like a separate conversation, but the curator at the Carn Museum would love to know more about Lanzone, and perhaps separately, but would you be able to tell us a little bit about?
Yes, well, I can tell you something very quickly, but I would like to have the contacts and to be in contact. If you come to the museum now, you actually see a painting where Lanzone is represented. Lanzone is represented in a painting with Ariodante Fabretti, the then director, and they're studying a stele. And Lanzone wrote the first mythological and religious dictionary of ancient Egypt. So I would love to be in touch with the curator, and maybe we can explain information, exchange information, and we can look for through our archive. Actually, so it's very nice. Is the painting that you saw in one of the slides, you see Lanzone reading a stela and sitting on a chair is Ariodante Fabretti, and it looks like, you know, the museum was a place of studies where scholars would come and study the text and trying to understand.
Wonderful. And the next comment kind of ties in with that, the fact that you can meet virtually and have a conversation with different museums and different visitors as today, and think about the conversations that were happening in person or via correspondence in the 19th century. But I have someone which builds upon your presentation about what do you think about the virtual reality experiences with the goal of extending museum access to people on site, but also around the globe. And you've already discussed that, but would you like to speak more about what your museum is doing?
Yes. I think we all accelerated during the COVID crisis also, put all in a kind of relationship. How does immateriality ties in with materiality? Actually, you have to know that on the 12th, 13th and 14th of March, we are supposed to have an international symposium on called Immaterialities, where we wanted to discuss how we could develop a new digital archaeology. We had to cancel that because we were in lockdown at that moment. But there is a lot of thought going on here in the museum of actually, if you come to our museum, you will see very little digital display. When people are inside, I want them to see the material culture. We have one room, which we call Invisible Archaeology, where on the other hand, you see a lot of digital. You see our excavation, you see some of the images that I showed you. I think that we have to have a huge way, we should stop and think how archaeology and materiality can be combined with the digital revolution. And sometimes I say, we do not have to create a surrogate of the museum. The museum with its objects will always be here because the objects are what we call the agency of the object. That's why we go to a museum. But the digital revolution can help us to convey a different message. I always say it could help us to build up the impossible Egyptian museum. We could put pieces together. We could bring back the landscape. I have a wonderful collection of statues, one of the most important collection of statues of the ancient Egypt. And now when you come here, you see the colossi of Ramses II, of Seti II. But how wonderful would it be if these colossi could be put back in their landscape? And then it would not only be a statue, but a document reading the architectural monument it was inside. And you know, one other problem that we have in Egyptian museum, people tend to see Egypt just like a point, but we have a huge chronology. When you walk through our gallery, we have 5,000 years of chronology. And so when you walk in Thebes, you could work in Thebes at the beginning of the New Kingdom and all the way at the end of the first millennium. And that's something that I would like to, I don't know how yet, but whether with new technologies we could repair what we did in the past, So put objects together, what I call in Latin disiacta membra, and give back the landscape. A museum is the negation of landscape, but only if we have the landscape, we really understand the function that the object had in antiquity.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so many now, I feel that especially with this pandemic inspired shutdown and opening of our virtual world and virtual museum visits, there's so much possibility to develop this, and the idea of the visitors walking through your museum in time and rebuilding the landscape is very exciting. And I want to answer a few more of these questions. And someone wanted to know, thinking about the reuse of the coffin, what happened to the mummy in the coffin? I think you kind of addressed that. And obviously there are multiple possibilities, but.
Yes, I have to introduce two little concepts. One of them is called the architectonization of the coffin, which we assist in the 21st century, in the 21st dynasty, sorry. Egyptians were not able to build tombs anymore, but they needed a text on the walls, and they transferred those texts on the coffin. That's why we see the coffins are so full of text. But when the coffin were reused, what happened, the mummy was taken out of the coffin and left in the burial chamber aside. And so they're starting doing the architectonization of the body, as it were. There are a lot of elements which were typical of the coffins which were transferred to the mummy. So in between the linen, we find that the linen are drawn with or painted with the figure of Osiris and Isis, with part of the Book of the Dead, so that all the information that the deceased would need in the after would stay next to him. We also have to remember that some of the burials were destroyed. Sometimes during excavation, we enter a burial chamber and we find it completely black, which means that it was plundered in antiquity, because plunderers would go inside, set fire in order to retrieve gold and precious stones, and the rest we were not interested in.
Right, right. Oh, so many stories there. Well, unfortunately, we're coming close to the end of our time together, but it's very much creates a catalyst for more visits to your museum digitally or in person. And several people wanted to know what projects you're working on, obviously both virtually, but also what might visitors who have the pleasure and a capability to visit Turin, what are you planning at the museum and on your website in the next upcoming? Yes. You mentioned at the beginning, but to
So first of all, on the website, if you want to have a look at our website, we have just been awarded a very important European prize for our project on papyri. We have 26,000 fragments of papyri, the most important administrative archive from ancient Egypt, and we are pasting together all these fragments. We're doing cooperation with the University of Oxford, Liège, Basel, and so we have a virtual light table where you can see this fragment that can be put together, and there is a transcription from hierarchy to hieroglyphs, transliteration and translation with all the languages of Egyptology, so English, German, and French and Italian. You also find our website. Our journal is a scientific journal, is completely free, accessible, free of charge, where we do not put a PDF, but HTML articles, so sometimes you can even see the 3D models of objects that go around. If you come to the museum now, we have just reopened, we opened it in December, new galleries. I'm going back to Lanzone concerning the history of the museum. We opened them on the 19th of December. We still have going on till the end of the year this exhibition, Invisible Archaeology. We have a small exhibition on a mummy and the link between physical anthropology, cultural anthropology, and archaeology. And we hope, inshallah, if we can find the money, to open a new gallery in 2021, which will be called a Live 6 Stories, where we want to exhibit the burial goods, the coffins, and the mummies, of 6 mummies, which have been studying and documenting and publishing. And so you will see all their lives, all the information we have of their lives. And these mummies belong to different stages, different ages in the life of a person.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I look forward to the day that I personally, and I believe many of our virtual visitors, are able to travel to Turin to visit this in person, but it sounds like there's so much information that we can visit online. So thank you so much. And to those of you who asked questions, I'm sorry we can't answer them all today, but I believe many of your answers can be found on the Museo Egizio's website for that. And thank you so much. I did want to, as we wrap up today, obviously so many people have questions. We would love to keep you, but it sounds like you have much research and work to do. I just wanted to speak very briefly. The Newark Museum of Art has a much smaller collection of Egyptian objects than your collection. We have about 2,000 objects. The museum was founded here in Newark in 1909. And really starting in the 1920s, our director, John Contandena, was very interested in looking at design and art, how things were made from all cultures, and seeing everything equally in terms of, is it beautiful? Is it good craftsmanship? What are the design elements? And so in the 1920s, the museum began to collect Egyptian objects, and through today, but really focusing on objects from everyday life. And one person asked, we have a coffin lid of Hennet Mer. We do not have the rest of the coffin, nor the mummy. And our files say that it is made of sycamore fig wood. And now I think we have many more questions based on your presentation today. So when people are able to visit the Newark Museum of Art, we have a small gallery of art of the ancient Mediterranean showing Egyptian objects as well as Greek and Roman and Cypriot. And so we can learn a lot from your presentation today. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Greco, for your time and all of your research and that of your institution. And I want to let everyone know that thank you so much for joining us. And our next Lunch and Learn will be next Thursday, August 20th. Conversation with the artist local here, Dalia El Sayed. And so thank you everyone out there in the internet. I wish I could see your faces, but thank you for joining us virtually at the Newark Museum of Art. And again, all of those of you who have joined us, thanks to your interest in Dr. Greco's work, welcome to the Newark Museum of Art. And again, I'll sum up by saying thank you so much, Dr. Greco. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, and thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
You too.